Today we're going to look at Armstrong Park. This is a park right on the edge of the French Quarter, so let me give you a look around so you can see where you are. Right behind me is the actual French Quarter, the neighborhood, the old neighborhood of the city. So this would have been the outskirts of the city, right here where Armstrong Park is. In fact, we're on Rampart Street, and the Rampart was supposed to be the wall of the city. So this was definitely on the outskirts. So let's go on and look at it. Here is a plaque, and it's kind of funny because right here it's still saying that he was born on 4th of July, 1900, which is what he said. But we know now that he was actually born 4th of August, 1901. But when the park was dedicated in the 1970s, I don't think that they had realized that yet. Behind me is Congo Square, and Congo Square is inside Armstrong Park, and you see like this big area behind me where they have festivals, and even today people gather to dance and to drum and gather together. It's a gathering place. And so this was the gathering place of the enslaved Africans. It was right on the outskirts of town, so on Sundays they would gather together without any white people around, 700 to 800 people, and this is where they kept a lot of their African traditions alive that still exist in New Orleans today. This sculpture behind me is one of the many really beautiful sculptures that are in Armstrong Park today, and we'll take a closer look at it. This is sort of a sculpture mural, and it commemorates Congo Square. So if you see here, it tells you that in the late 17th and well into the 18th centuries, slaves gathered at Congo Square on Sundays and sang, danced, and drummed in authentic West African style. So this sculpture was put here about 10 years ago, and let's take a look at some of the figures. Look, there's the djembe drum, which is an African instrument that was brought by the enslaved Africans that came here. And we have their faces. There's a banjo. The banjo is also an African instrument. This native person gathered together because there were also native people, indigenous people out here dancing. They're doing, I think, the kalinda, or one of the dances. This man right here with the scars on his face is supposed to be Dr. John. He was a voodoo practitioner, but since he was born in Africa, the prince of his tribe, he had the tribal scars on his cheeks his whole life. So we have all the people here, and they're dancing and drumming, and they're smiling and they're happy, but at the base of the statue, we keep the ropes and chains to remember that they were indeed enslaved. So despite the fact that they were creating this rather lively culture, they were still enslaved people. In addition to it being Louis Armstrong Park, and these are various plaques from when it was dedicated and rededicated, it's the Roots of Music Cultural Garden, because the roots of New Orleans music are definitely here in what is now Armstrong Park. This sort of little collection of sculptures depicts the second line, the moving jazz procession that we love to have in New Orleans for weddings and funerals and just about any occasion. And so each one of the figures is marching and playing in the second line. The typical hat. The sculpture behind me depicts Mardi Gras Indians, but specifically one Mardi Gras Indian, Tootie Montana, who actually literally died defending the right of the Mardi Gras Indians to assemble in public. We're going to take a look at the statue. He was a master at creating the costumes and keeping the community together. He was a big chief. And in 2005, the city was insisting that the Mardi Gras Indians had to get a permit to assemble, which is against their tradition. The tradition is that they assemble and they don't announce in advance where they're going to be. And it's sort of something that people in New Orleans do to go look for the Indians, you know. And in the old days, they would surprise each other and they would have these gang fights, so they couldn't let everybody know where they were. And that was the tradition. So in 2005, he appeared before the city council to argue in favor of letting the Indians assemble without making an announcement and getting a police barricade and everything. And during the proceedings, when he's standing in front of the city council, he had a heart attack and died right there in the city council chambers, literally defending the right of the Mardi Gras Indians to assemble without getting permits. This really impressive building is the Municipal Auditorium. We used to have lots of concerts and balls and sort of things like that here, but it hasn't been reopened since Hurricane Katrina. Behind me is the statue of Louis Armstrong, who this whole park is named for, and this is the place where we often get our picture taken as well. Behind me is the Mahalia Jackson Theater for Performing Arts, so this is where they have the concerts and stuff since the Municipal Auditorium has not reopened. And it is named after Mahalia Jackson, who is another great famous gospel singer who was from right here in New Orleans. There's a lot of other sculptures in the park, and I will show you a few of them. This one is just a bust of Sidney Bichette, a famous jazz musician from the earliest days. Here is one of Mahalia Jackson, and looks like someone has left some flowers. This sculpture depicts Buddy Bolden, who was really the first jazz musician, or the king of jazz. And I think the three heads represent the fact that he did suffer from schizophrenia. He never made it out of New Orleans or out of Louisiana. He died in a mental institution. Those are hills behind me, and they're fake hills. There are no hills in New Orleans.